My name is Daryl Anka, and for the past 40 years I have been channeling an extraterrestrial entity that we call BASHAR. BASHAR is a first contact specialist from his civilization, which is called Esasani, which is in a parallel reality. If we were to overlap their reality with ours, his planet would be about 500 light years in the direction of the Orion constellation. He's brought through a lot of information to us over the last 40 years, and we're going to explore and share some of that information today in this series. My experience with him began in 1973 when I had 2 broad daylight UFO sightings here over Los Angeles, which started investigating the idea of what that was all about and led me to the understanding that Bashar and I have made an agreement to do this channeling before this life. So we would like to present that information to you in this series.
I did a channeling with my head wired to a brainwave machine, EEG machine. And there were many unusual things that happened in my brain during that channeling state. One of the most profound things is that there are certain centers of the brain that are responsible supposedly for processing the personality. During the channeling state, my personality center is shut off. So if I'm not there, who's speaking?
So here we have a picture of what disconnects when Daryl begins to channel. And you can see the areas in blue, the functional Brodmann areas we call them, that are not used when he is channeling. And it appears that he disconnects from his personal sense of self. He disconnects from the experience of pain. Now what increases when he begins to channel is, first of all, his processing speed. And processing speed is a very interesting phenomenon because what happens is it develops early in childhood. And by about the age of 5 or 6, and certainly 9 or 10 maximum, we reach a set point. And this set point doesn't usually change during the lifetime. And in Daryl's case, it actually went up when he began to channel. And it increased when he listened. The actual frequency of the processing speed was tuned to an exact frequency all over the brain. Now we're looking at Daryl's anterior cingulate while he's channeling. And you can see the red areas there. There is actually gamma frequencies that I found in his anterior cingulate. And gamma frequencies relate to the higher mind. And gamma frequencies are often found in Tibetan monks and people who meditate a lot. To summarize sort of what I found here in Daryl's brain in comparison with the channeling state, he starts from a very stable resting state. And then he experiences changes that statistically less than 1% of the population would experience in the same way. He increases his processing speed. He tunes it exquisitely to one frequency all over the brain. And then he's able to create a resonant holding environment for the peak performance or the channeling to happen. He pumps energy into the right frontal cortex and the right auditory cortex so that he can empathize and hear very, very clearly. And because of the gamma frequencies in the anterior cingulate, he can shift gears. He'll be able to shift gears and navigate cognition, thoughts, and emotions very, very flexibly. And he'll be able to interpret from a higher perspective, from a more evolved place in his mind, much like from the highest mountaintop.
My name is Daryl Anka. I am the channel for an entity known as BASHAR. I am also a writer, producer, director. As a young boy, I've always been artistically inclined. I could start drawing as soon as I could pick up a pencil when I was 2 years old. But I had an incident happen that happened at 3 years old that I didn't remember until much later in my life. And I was playing in the living room of my parents' home. And I was, one of those things where kids make a fort with a card table and a blanket. I was underneath it, I was drawing. And what appeared to me in midair was this whirlpool of light just hanging there. Now, as a child, I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't. But my perception is that there was somebody communicating to me through that, as if it was a window to somewhere else. For me, that became what I would consider to be the inciting incident that indicated that there was some kind of an agreement here that was going to unfold at some point in my life that had to do with the channeling. But it didn't really get triggered until 1973. In 1973, I was in my early 20s when on two occasions in broad daylight, a week apart, I had two very close UFO sightings with friends with me both times. The first time was only about 125 feet away. The second time was only about 60 or 70 feet away. Some kind of an advanced technological ship. No sound, being able to move in unusual ways. You don't think much of it until you actually see something yourself. And then your whole world turns upside down because those things weren't supposed to really exist. But seeing something like that solidly made me realize that things were much different than we were being told. So I wanted to find out more about it. I started doing the research, finding any book I could on UFO sightings. And at that time in 1973, you know, the metaphysical section in bookstores wasn't very big. You could probably find everything on one shelf. There was UFO stuff, there was psychic stuff, there was channeling stuff. Mostly the Seth material at that time was becoming pretty popular. So I read all of that and I started just kind of digesting all of this stuff and realizing that there was sort of a whole other world going on here. 10 years after the sighting, I was introduced to a channel who was conducting seminars at the time. I went into the class not because I thought I wanted to be a channel in any way, shape, or form, but I was curious as to how channeling could be taught, because I just sort of assumed it was something that just sort of happened to you out of the blue. But I wanted to further my research, so I went into the class, and it was a series of different guided meditations, and it wasn't like you were necessarily expected to have to channel with an entity, but it was about getting in touch with your creative side, your own higher mind, however you wanted to use the meditations. But about halfway through the course, we were in a particular guided meditation being given by the entity through the channel. Something happened that I can only describe as a kind of an instant telepathic contact from BASHAR. It was like somebody just sort of shoved this information in my head in a split second. I instantly remembered making an agreement before this life to do this with him. I understood the UFO had been shown to me by him to get me to start doing the research that I needed to do. So when it came time to fulfill the agreement, I would have enough information to not be afraid of it, to be somewhat understanding of what was happening. And the message basically was, now you know it's time to begin. Is this something you still want to do? It was a choice. Now, all of this happened in a split second. It's like somebody just took a DVD and just shoved it in your head, and suddenly you've got the whole story. And I thought, okay, am I hallucinating? Is this a side effect of the meditation? I didn't know what was going on. But the second this was happening, because I hadn't said anything out loud, the entity stopped talking to the class and turned right to me and said, there is an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin. And in that same moment, I happened to glance behind me at one of the other classmates had somehow picked up on the image of BASHAR I saw in my head, and she was sketching it on a piece of paper, his face. So I said, okay, this is not just my imagination. There's something going on here. I guess I'll just keep exploring and see what happens. So by the end of the next class, a woman named Margot Chandley, who was doing the first thesis paper for her doctorate on the connection between psychology and channeling, asked me to be one of the subjects that she could study to write her paper. And so I would go to her house, she would invite friends, I would sit there and channel, she would take her notes and write her paper. Well, the first week, it was like 5 friends. The next week, there was 10 friends, and then it would be 20 friends and 30 friends. And then we had to start renting auditoriums to get all the people in. And as soon as people in other cities and other countries started hearing the tapes, they started inviting me to travel to their city or their country. And here I am 36 years later, still doing this.